Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Ms. Berry,
Present.
Ms. Casper,
Present.
Mr. Hammonds is absent, Ms. Myers,
Present.
and Mr. Vella.
It looks like the first thing we have is governance, consideration, and possible action to approve recommended application for Pathways Adult High School Completion Program. And I've reviewed those. There were a few more that came in, and I checked those out very briefly, but as far as I know, everything was approved or is adequate. Okay. Does anybody else have any comments on those? Then I would accept a motion to approve those applicants.
Motion.
Second.
Ms. Berry,
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
Yes.
Mr. Hammonds is absent, Ms. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Vella.
Yes.
All right, we are on to consideration of possible action to accept Epic Charter School financial audit for 2023-24 school year. Janice.
All right, the audit today will be presented by partner Kinsey Duarte. He's attending on Zoom, so I will turn it over to him for presentation and you can have conversation and questions with him. And I'm available for questions as well.
Thank you, Janice. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me just right?
Yes.
Well, we should.
To present the results of the audit for the financial statements of the year ending June 30, 2024. I believe you do all have physical copies of the report. If we go to page 3 of that report, which is the opinion letter, it is our the first page that has our logo in it. On that page, it is our opinion of the report, and we present an unmodified opinion under the regulatory basis of accounting. In other words, that's what you're looking for, that's what you're after. Essentially, there were no misstatements that were pervasive or considered adverse that required us to have to modify our opinion. So no disclaimer, no adverse opinion on the regulatory basis. There is an adverse opinion on the third paragraph of that letter. And essentially that is common, right? That's what we have in the past the past years. It's not new. Essentially, it is of an adverse opinion on the U.S. GAAP, the generally accepted accounting principles for the United States of America. And what that is that the state of Oklahoma, and the Oklahoma State Department, it accepts the report to be on the regulatory basis. Essentially, there is a note 1, and we'll go over those here in a second. It talks over what those modifications are, but under the regulatory basis, which is accepted by the Oklahoma State Department of Education, we have an unmodified opinion, which is that second paragraph that we first touch on. During our audits, we conduct our audit. Sorry, go ahead.
You're cutting out ever so slightly. And can I ask you to restate what you just said, please?
Yes, certainly. So we have an unmodified opinion on the regulatory basis. Are you all able to hear me? Am I cutting off?
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So we have an unmodified opinion on the regulatory basis, and that is what the financial statements, the basis that the financial statements are prepared under the regulatory basis accounting. We do have an adverse opinion, and that's the third paragraph, but that is because it departs from the U.S. GAAP, right? So the generally accepted accounting principles. Now, that's no new for us this year. Is how school districts or other state that follow the regulatory basis Those are, they have that adverse opinion because it doesn't follow US GAAP, right? It follows a different basis, which in this case, it is accepted by the Oklahoma State Department of Education.
Okay, thank you
It's
very
not
much.
an adverse misstatement. Yeah. We conducted our audit in accordance with auditing standards, as well generally accepted in the United States of America, as well as the government auditing standards. And under those standards, we are required to be independent of the schools, EPIC, as well as to follow our ethical responsibilities. And we were able to do so during our audit year, fiscal year 2024. On the second page, page 4 of the report, there is a section that talks a bit more about the auditor responsibilities for the audit of the financial statements. And there's 5 bullet points there that talks more towards what those responsibilities for our auditors during the audit year we had to follow. And we were able to exercise professional judgment, maintain professional skepticism, and identify and assess risks of material misstatements, and as well as the other points that are included in there. Moving along, I wanted to go over page 5 of the report, and that is the statement of all governmental fund types regulatory basis for the activities. Statement of activities, and that is page 5, which includes the revenues, the expenditures, other financing sources. In that page, we did have a reclassification this year that went from local sources that were originally recorded to federal sources, right? And we'll go about over that a bit more at the end of the report, but I wanted to point it out, that reclassification and that difference, that change that was made for this year's report. On page 6 of the report, that's where our notes, the financial statement starts. The notes are an integral part of the financial statements, right? It provides more additional information because on the schedule statements, we're only seeing numbers, right? So the notes give us a bit more information towards and background of those numbers and what those changes were. On page, I would like to go over page 8. Page 8 for note 1D. That is the basis of accounting and presentation. So the presentation that we talked about, the modifications from regulatory basis from US GAAP to the regulatory basis. And there's about 7 bullet points that goes over those modifications, right? On page 18, the very last note, it is note 5 of the financial statements report. It is for subsequent events, and I usually like to go over that note because what that means is if there were any significant transactions during that occur after June 30, 2024 in this instance, all the way through when the financial statements were available to be issued, we're required to include any subsequent events that are significant to include them in there. And there were no significant transactions that were considered subsequent event that we needed to include in the financial statements. Page 20 of the report. There is a report under government auditing standards, it's also known as Yellow Book. We all refer to as Yellow Book. Essentially, what that report says is that if during our audit, if we identify any deficiencies, we're required to, on internal control deficiencies, we're required to report it in this note, right? Again, when we consider control deficiencies on internal control, what that means is whether management were able to prevent or detect and correct any misstatements on it, of any misstatements that would affect the organization, right? In this instance, the school. A material weakness, it is a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies that in internal controls that it could there's a possibility that could be materially misstated. The financial statements could be materially misstated, right? A significant deficiency is a less severe deficiency than a material weakness, but still important enough that merits the attention for us to bring it to your attention. And in this case, this year we do have one consideration of material weakness that it's under the finding 2024-001, and we'll go over that here in a second once we'll get to that part of the report. Page 22, it is the in relation to the financial statements opinion under the uniform guidance, essentially for the federal expenditures of the school for the audit year. And what it does is it's a in relation opinion to the financial statements that speaks specifically to what was tested as a major program. So any federal program that was tested over that was considered a major program, as well as it goes over the schedule of expenditures of federal awards and the reconciliation with the financial statements. On page 24, it's the what we call CFA, the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. And you can see the total of the expenditures for the year ending June 30, 2024 was a total of $44,454,000. Page 26, it is what's called the summary of auditors results. And this essentially summarizes everything, right? The results from the financial statements, from the yellow book, as well as the federal awards specific to those federal expenditures that were recorded in the CFA and that we tested as a major program. So you can see on the financial statements, we talked about the adverse opinion because of the other comprehensive basis of accounting that is on the regulatory basis, that it is accepted by the state. We did have a material weakness on the internal control of financial reporting, as well as the non-compliance to the financial statements noted. On the federal awards, there was no material weakness identified, no significant deficiencies. The program that was tested as a major program under the federal expenditures was the American Rescue Act of 2021 ESSERS under federal system listing number 84.425U. And I believe if we go back 2 pages to page 24, under the CFA, we have the amount of expenditures for the year for that program. Is the very last program on the schedule was $25,298,000. Now, if we move to page 27 of the report, that is our scheduled findings and question costs, where we include what the findings were that we talked about, item 2024-001. And it's for the classification of revenues. There's a material amount that was initially recorded as local sources that needed to be classified as federal revenue instead. And it was related to the emergency connectivity funds. And we have on the schedule, we have what's the criteria of the finding, the cause and effect, and also there's a section for every finding. There's always a section that allows management to respond to the finding and provide their perspective on that. We do the program. There were expenditures that are started back in 22, 23, and now in 24 with reimbursements that occur in 23 and now 24. Now in 24, the reclassification was of about $4,247,000 from local sources to the federal sources. And again, this program was confusing, right? Because it operates almost like the E-rate, which E-rate is not considered to be federal expenditures or revenue source. However, using the same programs, however, it did require to be considered as a federal expenditures. Same with the revenues, and that's why we had to do the reclassification for it in this year's statement of activities. Page 28, it is the schedule of findings of prior years. In the prior audit findings, and with that, it is the we show the 2023-001 for the accurate reporting of the reclassification of the revenues, as well as the reporting the program in the CFA, which is a schedule of expenditures. And with that, are there any questions, comments related to the financial statements report before I move on to the post-audit letter?
We have none.
I'm not sure if you do have it with you, the required communication letter with those charged with governance in front of you. If you don't, essentially what that letter does is provides more information as far as there were any if there were any items that needed to be communicated in addition to what was reported in the financial statements, if we had any, if during the audit we encountered any difficulties performing the audit, as well as if we had any disagreements with management. And for the final financial statements report that we do have, we did not have any disagreements or encounter performing the audit with difficulties with management this year. We do have the management representation as far as the financial statements. And we also show under the corrected and uncorrected misstatements that reclassification amount from local to federal sources on the revenue side. Are there any questions or comments?
Okay.
Sir, on page 28, under condition, internal controls over financial reporting lacked oversight and thorough review. What exactly do you mean by that?
Page 28. That's for the identifications. We're required to look at the when you're looking at the internal controls, whether on the accuracy, completeness, and classification. So that was on the identifying that that program was federal rather than local source, right? And so that classification on the financial statements and the statement activities, since it was recorded as local initially rather than federal. So the identification of the accuracy and classification of those revenue streams.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I did want to mention just before we ended that as soon as the information was brought up to management, they really did everything in their hand and everything they could to find the information and make the correct changes. So there was no issues with management there and trying to get that the accurate report completed.
So regarding the status as partially resolved, what would it what does it take for it to be fully resolved?
That is timing. So since the report is as of June 30, 2024, and identification of that HAP occur after June 30, 2024, then as of June 30, that time, it was not complete, not resolved, right? And it will be for next year, it should be completed and resolved as it is now for the end report. It's a timing issue.
Thank you.
Sarah, you said.
Hmm.
You said.
Pardon me?
Any further questions?
Nope, that's
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, we are on to hearing from Deputy Superintendent of Finance, Janice Wynn.
We need a motion to accept this. If you want to accept the report.
Do y'all want to speak with Janice before we do that, or are you ready to accept this now? Okay, I would accept a motion to accept the report.
Second. Ms. Berry,
yes.
Ms. Casper,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond is absent, Ms. Myers,
Yes.
and Mr. Vella.
Yes.
Okay, now, Janice.
Thank you for that. It was a long time coming. I feel like I could just sit here and cry for a while. It's the relief. But instead, we're going to do a financial update for January 31st, 2025. It's buzzing, but not moving. Okay. At the end of January, our fund balance was at 11.8, and I noted the increase since that's what we're focusing on. The increase in January was just under 5.8 million, 5.78 million, which is great. And we talked about this last month. That midterm adjustment was posted in January, which is substantial on the revenue side. So that gives us a bump in our journey to a higher fund balance towards the end of the year. Here's our cash balance projection, still looking good. And that big jump is January. So that's exactly what we expected would happen. And it did, so that's good. Revenue versus budget. January was below budget, which is great. We should hopefully keep that trend going from now to the end of the year. And actually, I just said that backwards. Expenses. I'm so sorry. It's been a long day. Can you go back one? This isn't working at all. Okay. Yes, January revenue was slightly lower than budget. Those budgets are estimates of percentages based on the timing of federal claims. It can fluctuate from month to month, but overall for the year, we're exactly where we need to be. December and November were both higher, and we're filing our claims really fast right now because we don't always know exactly what's going to happen with our federal reimbursements. Sometimes we get notices that they're paused or things are happening outside of Oklahoma with federal reimbursements. So we're filing them as fast as we can. So you're going to see some months are up and some months are down, but that's the reason for the fluctuation is those federal reimbursements. Okay, next. All right, there's expense versus budget. We did have a little bump in expense in January. The majority of that was coming in the learning fund. We had busy ordering from parents over the Christmas break, which is exciting and fun. It was a higher volume than we've seen before because of the new Amazon catalog. So we did see a little bit more expense in January, but overall we are still in good shape. Next, please. And then there's our projection between now and the end of the year for revenue. And next. And then for expense. So we are doing very well there. You can see every month we're making up ground. So next please. I think that's it. Yep, that's all I have for January. We'll be back in just a few days to do February. If you have any questions about this report or the audit or anything else finance related, I'd be happy to answer them now or anytime that you want to meet. Thank you.
All right, I'll accept a motion to accept the financial statements for the period ending January 31, 2025.
Motion.
Second.
Ms. Berry,
Yes.
Ms. Casper,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond is absent, Ms. Myers,
Yes.
and Mr. Vella.
Yes.
All right, we are on to the consent agenda. Does anyone have any they would like to pull for discussion?
Okay.
Then I will accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Ms. Berry,
Yes.
Ms. Casper,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond is absent, Ms. Myers,
Yes.
and Mr. Vella.
Yes.
And a motion to adjourn.
I will motion.
Second.
Ms. Berry,
Yes.
Ms. Casper,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond's absent, Ms. Myers,
Yes.
and Mr. Vella.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
You.